All right, welcome to the first episode of Critical Weight Theory for 2026. And I already had a New Year's resolution that I was going to lose weight in a previous year, and I'm still following through on that, and with some success. So I was like, the New Year's resolution for 2026 is simple. I'm going to watch and review more movies and TV show episodes for the podcast. I like it. It's simple. It's something I can do very easily, right? It's not going to require a whole lot of effort to do that. So I'm probably going to be looking at least 5 times more movies and TV show episodes and reviewing them for hopefully your entertainment, or at least my own entertainment, to kill some time before I die. That's that's something that I think we all have to do. Just kill some time, and that's really what this is for. That's what everything is for, I suppose. To spend some time doing something instead of just doing nothing. Although, really, talking to a laptop mic is not really that different from doing nothing after all, is it? But anyway, this is my review of After We Fell as well. And it's partly because my review of After We Collided, my movie review video for that, has 106,485 views and counting. So it's actually my most successful YouTube video, and it's helping me get a little bit closer to monetizing this podcast. So, how about that? But I had this episode on the back burner anyway, even before that particular video had success. So it's not just me chasing after more views. I was planning to review this movie anyway. So, yes, today I'm talking about the sequel to After We Collided, titled After We Fell. It's a 2021 romantic drama and the third installment in the After franchise. And I've been sort of hate watching that franchise in a way, but I do have to say, oddly enough, this installment is actually somehow better than the previous two, even though I didn't like the previous two. It's kind of strange. Now, I don't know if I was just trying to be more lenient on this movie or what psychologically, but it worked. Like, I actually like this movie better than the previous two. And if you've made it this far into the series, you already know what kind of a ride you're signing up for. There are big emotions, messy relationships, and a lot of arguing in some nice looking rooms. And an attractive couple. Well, I'm not really a very good judge of what an attractive guy is, unless we're talking about Brad Pitt or Johnny Depp. But from what I gather, the love interest, the male love interest in this movie is considered attractive. I know the main female actress is attractive, so you know it's got that going for it. Nice looking couple. And After We Fell is based on the popular Wattpad novels by Anna Todd, and it continues the on again, off again relationship between Tessa Young and Hardin Scott. Yes, his first name is Hardin. Ugh. But anyway, it's picking up after we collided, and at this point, calling their relationship turbulent almost feels generous. So let's start with the basics and go from there. We'll try to make sense of this movie and understand its appeal. So the film is directed by Castile Landon and runs just under an hour and 40 minutes. It's rated R for sexual content and language, which has been pretty standard for the franchise since the first movie. I kind of worded that weirdly. The last movie was not particularly sexually explicit. It's a little misleading to say that these movies are that sexually charged. You can find moments that are just as racy in a soap opera, for example. Like I said in the last review, there aren't like boobs bouncing around or whatever in this movie. I'm pretty sure I would remember the movie better if that was the case. I'm enough of a horn dog that yes, I would have had my attention somewhat better kept if that was the case. But instead, it's just like some attempts at racy love scenes or whatever. It's a romantic series, or it's supposed to be. Josephine Langford returns as Tessa. Hero finds Tiffin is back as Hardin, and the cast also includes Ariel Kebble, Mira Sorvino, Stephen Moyer, and Chance Perdomo. And apparently he died, unfortunately. So rest in peace to Chance. And yeah, that's a little bit of a sour note to this review. Even though I don't love this movie, I still don't want the actors to die, and that's a sad thing. So, plot wise, the movie revolves around a major turning point in Tessa's life. She's offered her dream job at a publishing company in Seattle, which represents independence, ambition, and a future that doesn't entirely revolve around Hardin. So maybe that's one of the strengths of this story is that there's a little bit more to it than just their relationship. And Hardin, on the other hand, wants stability and control or something like it. He's just graduated and wants to stay close emotionally and physically, and that difference alone is enough to spark conflict. But of course, the movie doesn't stop there. Hardin's jealousy and volatility continue to sabotage their relationship, and a little bit the story itself, to be honest, because that's part of the problem with this franchise is that it is repetitive. It's very cyclical, and it's like they're just caught in the same loop of just random fights here and there. And every step forward comes with two steps back. Trust issues resurface, arguments escalate, promises are made and broken, loyalty is constantly questioned, etc., etc. Things get even messier with the return of Tessa's estranged father named Richard Young. He's a recovering alcoholic trying to reconnect, and while his presence adds emotional weight, it also opens old wounds, and Tessa has to rebalance her forgiveness with self protection, in terms of emotions. And I think that might be why I relate to this movie a little bit better because there's this estranged father character coming into it who's dealing with issues. And of course, I'll just say right here, my own father was an alcoholic, so maybe that's why I could better understand this movie and relate to it. I think it had a little bit more depth because it's not just about Tessa and Hardin. It's also about this strained relationship with her father and trying to make amends and all that kind of stuff. And he's trying to put his life back together, and her father sort of bonds with Hardin over a strange circumstance. And I just thought it made the story a little bit more interesting to the point where I almost have to say that I kind of like this movie a little bit. And meanwhile, Hardin is dealing with his own emotional implosion. He travels to America to visit his mother, Trish, and while he's there, he uncovers a devastating family secret. The man he believed was his biological father isn't actually his father at all. Instead, Hardin learns that he was conceived as a result of his mother being banged by somebody named Christian Vance. So, that's a bit of an interesting story too, I suppose. But to me, I suppose because of my personal experience with alcoholics, I related a little bit more to Tessa's little controversy in this movie between her and her father, and the fact that he's struggled with the bottle. And this revelation about, Hardin's father not being his actual father, it shatters Hardin. He already had a fragile mental state, and it collapses even further in this movie. And rather than processing the trauma in some healthy way, he does what Hardin always does. He lashes out, he drinks, he pushes Tessa away, and there's a disastrous night where they accuse each other of sleeping around, which feels like a betrayal. You know, well, I guess it is in a way. They're just not able to trust each other, but it feels less like a betrayal twist and more like an inevitability at this point in the series. The film ends on a cliffhanger of sorts, and the audience is left hanging until the next installment, which is awkwardly and clumsily titled "After Ever Happy." So ooh, I don't know about that title, man. "After Ever Happy." It just doesn't sound. It just doesn't sound right. So, how was this movie received? Well, putting aside the fact that I actually genuinely like it more than the other two movies, critically, this movie did not fare well. After we fell, kind of, it just fizzled in the eyes of the critics. It holds very low approval ratings on review aggregators. Critics describe it as lacking plot, depth, or meaningful character development. And oddly enough, like I suggested, I kind of have to disagree, especially if you're comparing it to the other two movies. I think this movie actually did have more depth and character development. So I give it some points for that. And one of the most common criticisms was that the film feels like filler. A lot happens emotionally, but very little actually changes. And that critique still kind of holds. But I do understand the emotional roller coaster aspect of this. It is sort of like a soap opera in movie form. Many reviewers pointed out the repetitive cycle. There's an argument, a breakup threat, a sex scene that's not even explicit enough to be that interesting, reconciliation, and repeat the cycle over again. And if you've ever felt this way about long running TV shows that fall into predictable patterns, this movie hits a similar nerve. I might compare it to shows like The Walking Dead during its more repetitive seasons. They meet new people, they seem fine, and surprised they're terrible. Hope is gone, and you go out to meet new people and repeat the whole cycle again. That's kind of what this is like a little bit. And I used to write articles about The Walking Dead pretty often, so I'm a fan. But I understand that critique that show was also pretty cyclical, and it's kind of like how this movie functions too. And audience reactions were also mixed. Dedicated fans of the series generally enjoyed continuing Tessa and Hardin's story. For them, the emotional intensity is the point. It's not so much about specific story developments. It's more about the roller coaster aspect, I suppose. Others, even fans, might find the film boring, poorly paced, or emotionally exhausting without much payoff. Now, I think that there was a little bit more payoff in this one. Like I suggested already, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but there are some actual things that happen in this movie that I remember. They're like specific events, specific scenes that actually make this one a little bit more enjoyable even. And some viewers criticized recasting choices and said the constant emotional whiplash broke their immersion. And when every moment is dramatic, nothing really feels dramatic anymore. It's one of those sorts of things. And again, I hate to get back to The Walking Dead because it's a weird thing to compare it to, but The Walking Dead is also a highly dramatic show, and if things are dramatic all the time, well, you're gonna have some trouble keeping every audience member's eyes glued to the screen, because it's like the same feel over and over and over and over again. And I think that's one of the problems with this franchise too. If you're not already a fan by the first movie, you're probably going to struggle to stick with this series. And from a franchise perspective, After We Fell is in the middle. It's got the middle chapter problem. It exists to move pieces into place for later films rather than to stand strongly on its own. And from what I understand, even though I haven't watched the sequels, but they say that the sequels, After Ever Happy and After Everything, continue exploring whether Tessa and Hardin can survive their trauma, the secrets, and their seemingly fundamentally different life goals. Now, I don't know if those movies are any good. I'll probably eventually watch them, but that might be pretty far down the road. And behind the scenes, the film was produced by Voltage Pictures and Wattpad Studios. It was filmed in Sofia, Bulgaria, starting in September 2020, and shot back to back with After Ever Happy to save on costs and to manage cast schedules. And part of the casting change that some people complain about was due to the pandemic at the time. So keep that in mind. A lot of people, they complain that the way that the characters have different actors in different movies is a problem. And sure enough, it might be, but in this case, you should try to give it a little bit of a break because of that pandemic that was sort of raging at the time, that I think most of you will remember if you're, uh, if you're still aware of world events. Like if you haven't suffered amnesia, you should remember the COVID-19 pandemic. And despite negative reviews, the movie was a box office success, earning over $32 million worldwide. It was released simultaneously in theaters and on video on demand in 2021, which likely affected its theatrical numbers, but clearly didn't stop fans from showing up. So ultimately, After We Fell asks whether love can survive unhealed trauma, family secrets, and perhaps incompatibility. And it gestures toward the idea that differences can make people stronger, but it often shows the opposite. And instead of growth, we see these cycles. Instead of healing, we see emotional dumping without resolution. And if you're already invested in Tessa and Hardin, the movie gives you more of what you expect. If you're looking for character growth or a sense of closure, you may feel frustrated by this movie. In the end, After We Fell isn't trying to convince new viewers, it's speaking directly to its existing fan base, saying, after everything, we made it. Whatever our souls are made of, they're the same. I guess that's a quote from one of the books that I borrowed for this review here. So that's maybe a little bit of an Easter egg for the hardcore fans who are willing to suffer through my review of this movie that they presumably like. And whether that feels romantic or exhausting probably depends on how deep into the series you already are. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. I'm going to be doing more movie reviews, more TV reviews, like I said, and still do some of these same political content, social commentary. I'm going to be discussing more about life living in Michigan and in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan as well. Just more variety of content for this channel, and probably also more trivia, more this, more that. So, yeah, more music reviews too. Did I mention that? Jesus Christ, I probably forgot to say that. But anyway, have a wonderful new year. Hopefully, it's good for you so far. I know we've got a long way to go, and hopefully, there will be some actual positive developments along the way.